I welcome everybody. This is our last series, so we're excited and at the same time saddened by our great facilitator, Dr. Appel, and his words of wisdom and all his knowledge that he's been sharing with everyone. So we want to make sure that we also get your input regarding our future sessions. So anytime during the meeting, if you would like to make a suggestion, you're welcome to put it in the chat to ask us questions about future sessions or topics that you are maybe interested in us doing a follow-up on. Please communicate that with us in whatever format you feel more comfortable, whether it's through the chat or the Q&A, or just send us an email. That works too, because this is not the end. This is just the beginning. And we want to make sure our workshops and our webinars are relevant to what you need as a parent, not just navigating these times of the unknown, because there's so many unknowns right now. And I want to make sure that when we do meet, when we do offer these webinars, that we offer topics and have discussions that are relevant to what's happening in the parent world and the student world and within our community. So, so Dr. Appel, you have been a great navigator of that. Thank you so much for always being so open and accepting and answering all our parent questions. I really appreciate that. I wanted to thank you for that.
Oh, Ms. Delgado, you need not thank me for anything. It is one of the greatest pleasures of my week to be here anytime that I'm here and to be able to interact with the parents. And wanted to say a special hello to Miguel Ramirez, who said it's wonderful to be back for another seminar, and it's great to have you here, Miguel. Thank you for joining. Now, I am absolutely happy to answer any questions and happy to be here. It's a difficult path to navigate sometimes in the best of circumstances. These days, it's a little bit harder, and I have to commend, of course, all of the parents who take time out of their day to join us, but also to everyone at Sweetwater Union High School District for providing this sort of support for parents as they find our way. Because I think one of the clear messages out of all of these sessions is not one of us does this on our own. We all do this together. Parents and teachers and schools and everybody else and kids, we all go through this path together, and we will make it out the other side just fine. So thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. And it's not easy, and we want to make sure as a district that we communicate to all our parents that you are not alone. We're navigating all this together, and it's even though we might be locked up in our homes and working from home and learning from home, we want you to feel that you have a family here, that you can reach out to us or to Dr. Appel or to any of our educational institutions, because we know how difficult it is, not just for our K-12 students to navigate learning, but also as a parent to be able to navigate both your job and also school at home. So that is just amazing. I want to congratulate all the parents who have navigated this because it's not easy. And those teachers out there that they're teaching and they have their own students and they're at home and have their own kids online and also in class. And then you add on those parents that I know you're out there with college students online. And so it develops this very, very almost unimaginable stress level that we had never experienced before as a family, as parents, as teachers, as students. So we're in this together, and we're going to get out of it together. And so that's why I really appreciate Dr. Appel and his words and his uplifting recommendations and suggestions. So I welcome everybody, and it is 1 o'clock. Just a couple of reminders. Please post all your questions on the Q&A. We do keep track of those, and Dr. Appel does respond to all the questions if we run out of time at the end. Again, this is our last session. If you have any suggestions for future topics, future webinars, please don't hesitate to post those on the chat and or on the Q&A as well. We would love to have your feedback, and I'm working on a little survey for you, so maybe you can take that at the end if you're here until the end of the webinar, and also an option for you to answer later on when you're at home. Thank you so much, and Dr. Appel, it's all you now.
Thank you. And Ms. Delgado, I think I need to bring you wherever I go to introduce me. I don't think I will ever get a better introduction than the ones with which you have provided me over these 2 cohorts. So again, thank you. Parents and caregivers, whether you are at Sweetwater Union High School District or any of the local districts across the South Bay, I want to start, as always, with gratitude practice to thank you all for joining, for taking an hour out of your busy days. As Ms. Delgado was reminding us, all of us are so very busy, and some of you are running multi-age school from your home as well as doing your own work. So thank you for taking the hour out of your day. Thank you for welcoming me into your community and welcoming me into your home. Now, as Ms. Delgado said, this is the last of this series, and just like any other television series, I'm waiting for word on a pickup to see if there's going to be a season 3, but I'm glad to end it on this note. And I was asked to think about how we could move from what we studied earlier, sort of the adolescent brain and adolescent emotion and behavior, and then start to talk about motivation for college. And I was really eager to do that. And then I thought to myself, well, based on the way that I wound up in college, am I really the most qualified to speak to this? And I kept thinking, people are going to want to hear about how you can go directly in. And I thought I would not only talk about motivation and readiness, but really tell you my own story. And that is why this session is called The Meandering Path, because not everything is always a straight line. Again, you know where to find these materials and resources. They're always posted at the district website, but you can also find them on my SlideShare as well. I'm happy to send them to you in other formats, but you can certainly find it there. And just like every other Parent University session since session 1, we want to make sure that what we offer is good for heart, good for head, and good for hands, and meeting there in the middle at high performance, whether high performance means academics, living a good life, living a healthy life, and living a happy life. And in this latest series, we did start out with head. We started out with the adolescent brain. And in our first series, we looked at the brain generally, but in the beginning of the second, we looked specifically at adolescent cognitive development and some of the more interesting parts of that. We followed that with adolescent behavior, adolescent emotion, and how it sort of deviated from the norm at this age, and what are the kinds of things that you can expect. So we moved from head to heart. And now it is time really to talk about hands. How can we apply what we know in a very focused way in charting a course to post-secondary education? And in that way, we talk about motivation and we talk about readiness. So I want to start off with a quote. And this quote is, "If you trek into the wilderness and look around with a careful gaze, you'll see that trees, flowers, and even the rocks have a tendency to flow. There is the curve of the branch that leads to the blossom, the smooth dip in a rock formation, the gnarled knot in a tree trunk, and the forking of shoots. As nature is overflowing with curves, corners, and knots, and unexpected directions, so are our lives, filled with unpredictable twists and turns. And when I thought about that, I thought that, yes, I do understand unpredictable twists and turns, and I do understand unexpected direction, especially as the pathway to college isn't always straight. And I will tell you a little bit about my own experience there. Now, we learned a lot about me as circa 1982, the early 80s. I was an absolutely awful teen. And now I will invite you to accompany throughout the 80s. Now, you'll see in 82 to 84, when I was in high school, I was a notoriously bad student. I think my GPA was 1.3 at best. The only course that I really enjoyed and attended regularly was a 7th period arts class, and that all had to do with creativity and free expression. I was a rebel without a cause, or a rebel without a clue. Very badly behaved, got up to the typical adolescent shenanigans. I was in a band, and during this time in high school, we played a lot of club gigs, so I was not the best with homework, and I was fairly defiant. And in high school, my counselor made a deal with me. She said, if you go to community college over the summer and maintain a C average, we are going to let you out of here. And I said, I am all for that. And I headed in 1984 to the first of many community colleges that I attended, Contra Costa. And Contra Costa is a county in Northern California. And I went to school over the summer there, and I was so enamored of the campus and the fact that you could walk around and there were no bells and really no restrictions, and it was up to you if you went to class. I actually did go to class, and then I sort of got into a rhythm of going from community college to community college, thinking that everyone would provide an amazing amount of new scenery and different people to get to know. I went to both Laney College and Merritt College, both of which are in Oakland, but I always wound up seeing the same people I saw at high school. So again, I was wandering around, and I know that when we talked about the search for identity, there I was trying to sort of figure out who I was. Was I James Dean? Was I a college student? And I was really looking for novelty. I was looking for new experiences. And if you recall in our discussion of adolescent behavior and adolescent emotion, this was my strive for independence. So I went from complete defiance to a want of independence. But what I found is that I could actually do fairly well at community college. And I thought maybe I need to think a bit more serious. I didn't want to stray too far from where I was because they were all my friends. Remember, we talked about homogamy, this idea of finding your set, finding your tribe, and I found it at home. So I thought I would cross the bay. I went across the bay to San Francisco State University for probably a year. And I started to think more seriously about academics, but I was also working full-time. I worked at a clothing shop in Union Square in downtown San Francisco, and to the right you will see a picture of the type of clothes that I used to sell. This was 1986. You could probably tell just by the shirt itself, and if you can't really tell what it is, the sleeves are cut off. That was part of my uniform that I would don every day. But I was a working man, and I was trying to make the decision between working, and trying to work my way up in the company, or going back to school. And I had a decision to make. In the spring of 1986, I was offered the first opportunity to serve as a store manager. Problem was, it wasn't in the Bay Area. It was in a place called Glendale, of which I had never heard. And I really had to think about where my priorities were and what I was going to do. So as you can see, it wasn't really a straight line right out of high school and into university. I think certainly at this period in my life, I really wasn't mature enough. I probably would not have remained at university because I didn't have the metacognitive skills or the maturity to handle it. So spring 1986, I had to make a decision. And a little bit more background on me. My parents were both on the faculty at the University of California. I grew up in a town called Berkeley, where UC Berkeley was, and I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life growing up, but I know it was anything but that. Whatever the opposite of being at the University of California was, that's where I wanted to be. And remember, we talked about defiance and we talked about independence. So trying to establish a separate identity. But in spring 1986, I was faced with a decision. And all it took was a visit to a campus in Southern California, a UC campus in Southern California, to change my mind. And I will tell you, the experiential element of being on a college campus and visiting it and seeing what happens is a lot different, especially if it is away from home. So this idea that the decision to attend college is not always a straight path from middle school. And my mother put incredible pressure on me when we met with my middle school counselor. My middle school counselor said, has he been thinking about college? And of course, I could barely think about tomorrow, much less what was going on years into the future. And she said to my counselor, he's going to the Ivy Leagues. First of all, I didn't know what the Ivy Leagues were, but I know that didn't sound very appealing. So I probably in 7th grade started fighting back against this idea of going to college. So if you think about it, whether we are enwrapped in our quest for independent identities or other priorities that we face during our teenage years, sometimes the epiphany comes later, much, much later, and it does come. And for me, it wasn't until I was around 19 or 20 that I had this realization that I sort of needed to get serious. And I can tell you, if my parents had their druthers about attending college on their timeline, it would not have gone well at all. And I just thought I'd introduce you to the family a bit. This was my father. He has since deceased. He was a professor of psychology at UC San Francisco. The bottom picture there that you'll see to the right, that is me and my sister Hannah Appel. This was 1987. This was my first visit home from attending UC Irvine as a junior. She is currently an associate professor of sociology at UCLA, and she followed a very, very straight path, a very conventional path from high school to Yale to Stanford to postdoc to professor, which is, I think, the quickest way of getting there. You will see, as I mentioned, that I followed rather a meandering path, but I eventually got there. We sort of eventually wound up in the same places. I can tell you that my father's path is unknown, but I do know it was not straight. He was an auto line worker in Detroit. So he worked for General Motors on the auto lines before they all became automated. And he spent a lot of time at the University of Chicago before dropping out and then moving to Texas and then eventually finishing up at the University of Houston. So again, we all have to follow our different paths, even if we're in the same family and even if it is part of our family legacy. Now, I invite you to return to this graphic that talks about the brain's ability to change in response to experience and the amount of effort. So when you are an adolescent and you're experiencing all of the, the peer pressures and the parental pressures about college, remember, you're thinking primarily in the present versus the future. There's a lot going on in your teenage and tweenage years. So even if college is 2 years away, actually, it may as well be 10 years away. And I think a lot of this has to do, remember when we talked about the brain has to work in context to understand experience and to divine emotional connections to experiences. That's why we say it's important to start pretty early for obvious reasons, but also to provide experiences on college campuses as early as possible, to find success on college campuses. So if you're in a pre-college program, or if you're in an academic camp or some sort of experiential program, that when you get to the university, it should not feel as though it is 180 degrees separate from the experiences that you have. And we strive at UC San Diego to offer pre-college experiences and support for parents such that when you come to us, it feels like a second home. It's a natural transition. It's also very important as parents to be aware of the pressures that are applied to kids at this age, both implicit and explicit. And it's important also to remember that college is always about goodness of fit, both cognitively and emotionally. We all like to think of Harvard and Yale and Princeton and Stanford and Berkeley and all of those things, but really what's most important is that the college experience, the post-secondary experience provides a variety of opportunities for cognitive and emotional development. You should go to college and be able to flow, in as much as we talked about that when we were looking at brain compatible learning, this idea where you're always energized and you are experiencing positive feelings about education. You feel connected and you feel as though you are at home. And we can also, again, look at this in terms of identity development. So how do we move from this idea of cognition to behavior to motivation? And part of the problem is if you are in a state where you are identity diffuse and you're really not sure, you don't have a great sense of self, maybe that is not the time to put you into a situation where your first class is with 400 other students in an auditorium. So I think it's important that we also explore motivation in the context of identity development. And this is something that we discussed last time, but ideally the college experience, the post-secondary experience should support identity achievement and help you navigate through identity moratorium and identity foreclosure and really help you establish yourself. So again, it's important to think of this last session as sort of a natural capstone for the other two, where it is important to think about the way that the adolescent brain works, as well as the way that adolescents behave in their emotion. So what are we talking about, though, when we talk about motivation? Motivation, a lot of motivation is instinct. It's connected to the way that we see ourselves. It's connected to the way that our brains grow. It's connected to our emotional state, as well as to our identity development. So it's complex, multifaceted, and changing. This is to say there is not a magic recipe for motivation. It has to be very, very much individualized and tailored to unique individual needs in the moment. So let's look a little bit more at motivation. Again, we talk about motivation as being instinctual. Some of those things that motivate us, we don't have to think about. And we characterize motivation as energy or drive that gives our behavior direction and focus, and it has implications for the way we follow life's pathways. So you can think of my situation where I was more motivated perhaps to work full time or to advance in a company than I was perhaps to get a four-year degree or a college education. And again, all of these ideas, this idea of instinct and drive and growth, All of these sort of theoretical precepts give energy and direction to our behaviors, again, without thinking. We have needs that are present at birth, and these needs give our behavior direction. Now, when you think of motivation, you can think of it in two ways. You can think of it as intrinsic. In other words, that our motivations are inwardly focused. They're naturally satisfying. You take a course because you enjoy the course and you want to be able to gain knowledge from it, versus extrinsic, which is outwardly focused, which involves outside rewards and sanctions. So you would take a course because maybe it would advance your salary, or you would take a course because you get a certificate that you can hang on your wall. And when we look at motivation, we are really looking at both of these elements. We're looking at both intrinsic motivators and extrinsic motivators, but truly find that it is the intrinsic motivation that usually winds up pushing us forward. Extrinsic rewards can only propel you so far. And hopefully, when we talk about incentives, we talk about external rewards that eventually lead to internal satisfaction. Now, there's a number of theories that talk about motivation, and we'll look at three in some depth, but there are things like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. There's expectancy theory and attribution theory, interest theory, cognitive evaluation, self-efficacy, and self-determination, all of which try to unravel the knot of motivation and think how we can best use both intrinsic and extrinsic rewards to motivate people to do things, and or how do we explain our needs and how we satisfy them. So let's take a look at one of them, probably one that you are more familiar with, called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And in education of late, we have been talking about attending to Maslow before Bloom. And when we talk about that, we talk about attending to the socio-emotional first before we get to the cognitive or before we get to the academic. So what is Maslow's hierarchy of needs all about? Well, it's a lot like you think it might be about. What Maslow did is he looked at human needs organized into a hierarchy, starting with the much more concrete things that we all need: food, water, warmth, and rest, and then moving all the way to realizing our potential. And what Maslow thought is that when you meet a lower need, you can move on to the next. So if you think about your teens and your tweens in this context, think about where they are when they are considering college. And again, this all connects to neurochemistry. It all connects back to peers. It all connects back to the things that we've been talking about. But if you think about it, where does college fit in? Well, you'll probably find that most kids have their basic needs met, their safety needs met. A lot of them are still in a phase where they're considering the need to feel as though they belong, their intimate relationship, their friendships. And most of that is found locally. Most of that is found in school. Most of that is found with family. So if you're focused on that, it may be harder. Some of them are certainly thinking about self-esteem needs, prestige, and feelings of accomplishment. And that may push them a little bit further before going to this idea of fulfilling one's potential. Again, if Maslow is correct, you can't move from to another unless one is satisfied. It may be harder to convince kids who have a lot of friends at home, are very close to their families, to think about college or to think about something other than the immediate moment. We can also look at expectancy theory. And expectancy theory is a little bit of a different take. It is sort of a take on growth mind.
Es acerca de la mentalidad de crecimiento con un giro y tiene que ver con la forma como las personas entienden su comportamiento.
Talked a lot about self-esteem. We talked a lot about a sense of confidence, a lot of sense of competence as well. And teens are famous for doubting themselves at this age. And what we look at when we look at expectancy theory, we look at behaviors based on what the expected result is. So it's basically three components. The first is whether they can do this, and the idea I can do this, and it's based on experience and self-belief. So you can imagine if there is a student who's having trouble in school or is, has had a hard time of it, somebody like me whose GPA was deficient, you may doubt whether you can do this, not because it's not in you to be successful, but maybe because you can't handle the environment. So a lot of expectancy theory has to do with how you understand yourself and how you understand yourself in a context. The next part of this is instrumentality, and this is the belief that you will receive a desired outcome if the performance expectation is met. And then the third part is called valence, and this is the unique value somebody places on a particular outcome. And it's different for everybody. So let's think about college applications. So you can think about taking some extra courses to see if it will increase the likelihood that you'll get into college. So the expectancy part is, can I do this? Can I fit these into my schedule? Will I be able to pass them? Instrumentality, if I do this, am I more likely to get in? Is this something positive for my college application? And then the valence is how I value the outcomes. Is it really that important? You can thinking of the same way about parent university. Can I come for an hour? Can I stand listening to this guy for an hour? And if I do, what will I get from this? Will I understand my kids better? And then, of course, the last component is the value you place upon that. So we go from the, looking at things like experience and looking at things like meeting our needs for self-esteem, but also whether the outcomes make a difference. And then we can look at attribution theory, which is connected to all of this. And it looks at how thinking and behavior are interrelated. So what you see here is ability and task difficulty, effort, and luck. Some of these factors people understand to be stable. A task is as difficult as the task is. And it's not going to get any more difficult. Ability, if you have a fixed mindset, is you have a fixed level of ability that it will not change. So if you think about students who have higher ratings on this scale and have higher levels of school achievement, the idea is that they attribute success to these factors that are internal, stable, and uncontrollable, like ability. Whereas if they fail, they will contribute it to those things that are unstable or controllable, things like effort or uncontrollable factors like task difficulty. So the idea here is when you do well, how do you interpret it and the reasons for doing well? And when you're not doing well, who do you blame? So so you can hopefully see how all of these things interweave to contribute to motivation. And these things are happening often instinctually, where we're making these evaluations and making these decisions about moving forward. So given all that we know about college and holding a degree and workforce opportunities and salaries, why wouldn't people want to go to college? And we've had a look at some of the reasons that students don't consider college. One of them being that no one in their family has gone to college. They think college will be too hard. They may not get in. They don't know how to choose one. They are concerned about being away from family and things that are familiar. They think that they can't afford college. And within the post-secondary environment, within the academy, there are sort of hidden codes and hidden languages that not everybody is exposed to. And there is a real need, I think, for when high school students transition into college or transfer students transition into four-year institutions, that they often have to really advocate for themselves, that there are a plenitude of resources, but you really have to find them yourselves. And again, for some, going to college may as well be going to another country. There are different languages, there sort of a different academic culture to which you have to get used to. There is a geography that you have to get used to. I remember one of my biggest problems when I finally went to a University of California. I didn't really think very much when planning my classes, and I did not realize that I would, in some cases, not be able to get from one end of campus to the other without being consistently late. So there are some hidden codes, I think, that need to be better understood. And that leads to some deeper thinking about college and really attending to those questions that drive us forward motivationally. What does somebody want from life, and where does college education fit in? What do you know about college, and what is everyday life at college like? What are your reasons for going? Is it intrinsic? Is it extrinsic? What is pushing you? Is it parents? Is it job prospects? Is it the fact that you think that you should go, everybody else is going? Or is it something else that is pushing you? And the more information you have, and the better you are able to pour through this information to make a good decision, so much is the better. What is the value of post-secondary education, not only in terms of salary, but in terms of living a more fulfilled life? What are your interests and learning styles, and how do you learn best? That is incredibly important, especially if you are considering a fairly large campus where your first years are going to be spent in large lecture halls and smaller classrooms run by teaching assistants. If that doesn't align well to the way that you learn, that may not be the best choice for you. There are other institutions that offer smaller classes and different focus and better connections to faculty. You got to realize 4 years, I mean, optimistically 4 years, it usually is about 5. That's a long term investment. So, and I can tell you that at 19, I was not ready to make a 4-year investment. And I didn't really have a good idea of the alternatives that exist, but there are plenty. There are things like gap years. There are community colleges where you can sort of try things out. So again, these are all important things to consider, and it is imperative that the information that you have is accurate, especially when you are trying to assist your son or your daughter in making a good decision. Now, I know that UC San Diego, my own campus, all of the University of California campuses are highly competitive. And I think the predominant thought is that you have to have a 5.8 GPA out of a possible 4.0 and have to have written a bestseller, performed heart surgery, won an Oscar, and sang a hit song before being admitted. And one of the things that dissuaded me from applying, other than the fact that, my parents were both from there and I wanted nothing else more to do than do the opposite, was the idea that I wouldn't be able to get in, or I wouldn't even be considered. And I think it's important to note that most colleges and universities these days are taking a more holistic and well-rounded approach. Now, our own campus, their admissions office talk about looking for fearless innovators. They're looking for bold risk takers, people who want to take things apart, see what makes them tick, put them back together again in new ways, share experiences and ideas, and explore the world with a fresh perspective. Now, you will not see in there any reference to GPA or test scores, but this is a message that we telegraph to say, these are the kinds of people who do well at UC San Diego. And I think you will find this throughout the University of California system. So it is a way of reminding everyone that we're not solely about test scores, and we're not solely about grades, and we're not solely about some of the things that you might believe. What can you do to help motivate and to help support? Well, of course, one of the things we've always talked about from day one in these seminars and sessions is listening. Listen to what the students have to say. Listen to what your son or daughter is talking about in terms of their thoughts on college, so you can get a better idea of how to support them, whether it is fear of going, whether it's questions that they might have, or what is best for them. Make sure you're always a good listener. And from our last session, we know that being a good listener is incredibly important. Always be a cheerleader. Always be supportive when they talk to you about college and their aspirations. I remember, mentioning to my father that I may be interested in going to a UC or comparable school. And he said, yeah, but you don't have the grades. They wouldn't even look at you. Now that is harsh, of course. One thing you should know about my father, he was a psychologist. I think that explains quite a lot for those of you listening. But that did not do well for my self-esteem. And as a result, I was very risk averse when it came to post-secondary education. Now, this whole process, thinking about college, especially if you are an adolescent, and if you think about everything that adolescents go through in terms of social changes and changes to their bodies and everything that's going on emotionally, this whole idea of applying to and getting into and paying for college can seem incredibly overwhelming. So one of the strategies that you can use to help them is to break down these sort of huge goals into smaller, more manageable goals. And what we know about the neuroscience of this all is, remember that little successes mean a lot. And if you are successful at something, you are likely to go on to the next step. This idea of competence begetting confidence, begetting confidence, etc. So if you can help them break things down into smaller goals, so it's not, they're looking at it as, I got to apply for college and I got to decide where we're going to go. Break it down into much smaller steps. First step is, I'm going to take a look at some of the colleges I think I might want to. Take a look at those, then go on to the next step. Creating a clear roadmap is also important. And again, if you're following a meandering path, it may be a little bit more difficult, but sometimes it's difficult for adolescents to go from one place to the other. So what is the roadmap to application? What is the roadmap to college? How do you do things like choose a major, etc.? Sometimes it's good if you're able to transfer the motivation responsibility to others. Oftentimes our kids won't listen to us for whatever reason, but it's if you're able to hand this off to an objective third party, they will be good at delivering news that is accurate and provide support that doesn't seem like they are nagging or that they are pushing. So they'll be able to speak quite eloquently about college as a whole or particular colleges. And then it's also important to tap into key motivators. What kinds of things get them interested? Well, maybe it's not the science lab that gets them interested, but maybe it's the campus, or maybe it is activities that are at the campus, or maybe it's the games or what have you. But it's important, just as we tell our teachers, the key to successful teaching lies in knowing our students in great depth and then building from there. It's the same. Find out what are primary motivators to get kids interested into college. Maybe it's visiting, maybe they like going to the bookstore, but start where they are and then build from there. Finding the right fit. Again, I think everybody is very fond of saying, well, if you're going to go to college, you need to go to Princeton, Harvard, Yale, you need to go to the Ivy League, or you need to go to West Point or Annapolis. And again, college is really all about goodness of fit. You're going to be spending quite a long time there. And it's important that each of our students finds a place that feels like home, where they can develop both cognitively and socio-emotionally, just as we've discussed before. So how do you do that? Well, there are, certainly college counselors who are available. Our own college counseling program at UC San Diego, we are actually developing a practicum course in which college counselors will be able to meet with students and parents without charge. That's one way, certainly. But first of all, don't rush the process. Don't leave things to the last minute. You're going to be spending at least 4 years here. So maybe 2 years or to 4 years, but don't rush. Allow some time. Don't be a follower. I don't necessarily mean following the crowd, but sometimes you will have students will select an institution because their best friend is going there, or because their girlfriends are going there, rather than thinking in terms of goodness of fit for themselves. So whether it's a significant other or a group of friends, it's important to establish an independent identity, because usually you will find that even when friends do go together, each of the students will sort of find other groups and explore other opportunities, both socially and academically. Another word of caution, just because they have great sports teams does not mean it's going to be a great fit for you. So this is to say, you don't want to attend UCLA just because you are a fan of the Bruins, or you don't want to attend USC just because you've watched every Trojan game. It's important that you look at other factors beyond helmets and t-shirts. Sometimes we tend to judge books by its cover. So we'll take a look at the campus, or we'll take a look at student body. I can tell you, I made that mistake. I decided to go to UC Irvine somewhat sight unseen, because I looked at a map and I saw that Irvine was close to a beach. And I said, oh, okay, well, definitely choosing that one. Don't do what I did. Do as I say, not as I do. But also remember that the pictures that you see of campuses are taken on their best days. There are days on our campus where we know it's going to be photo shoot day, just because the way the weather looks and the angle of the sun and those types of things. So look beyond the physical attributes of campus, look beyond pictures of the student body, and really focus on those things that are most meaningful. Social atmosphere is a polite way to say, don't go to a school because it is a party school. That might do you well in your first year or two, but certainly not thereafter. Social interaction is a key part of the college experience, but I would advise against selecting a college primarily for that. Don't assume the worst just because of what you see. It really take the time to look in to a school and make sure that you visit. Oftentimes the visit will make all of the difference in the world. So don't pour through the catalog and go, oh no, that's not for me. Cost obsessions or carelessness, there are, an incredible number of scholarships and fellowships and financial aid packages that are available. I know that at UC San Diego and across the UC system, we have those are available to support tuition. Most of the Ivy Leagues and state universities have those as well. So make sure that you decide based on the academics and the campus life versus being able to afford it. This is not to say do the opposite and be careless. One of the mistakes that people tend to make is they will enroll thinking, oh, I'll just have to pay it later. Make sure that you are getting the best value for your money, and look at opportunities for scholarships and the like. Parent and peer pressure. You may have parents or peers who are saying, this is the school that you need to go to. Well, mom went here, so should you. Or, you'll have your friends saying, I don't understand. Why do you want to go out of state? We're all going here. So be aware of that. And relying on reputation alone. There are hidden gems in the post-secondary world. And again, most people, when they think of going to college, they strive for the Ivy League based on reputation alone. So it's important to consider, every element in making a well-rounded decision. Important to understand that when it comes to thinking about college, students tend to be their own biggest critics and own worst enemies. It's important that we, both as educators and parents, help them see things more realistically. I'd also advise engaging with college early on and take advantage of opportunities and supports available through universities in terms of pre-college opportunities for students and parents. And if you head over to our pre-college page at UC San Diego Extension, you'll see that we have a number of opportunities in which K-12 students can engage with the university, starting all the way back into rising third graders and all the way through high school. So getting familiar early on, getting comfortable early on. Again, the university, by the time you get there, should feel like a second home. Make sure your kids know that you're proud of them and that they belong at the university. There are a lot of kids out there who, we talked about imposter syndrome, and there's a lot of kids who think that they are getting in because they are lucky, and it doesn't feel like they belong. It doesn't resonate with anything that they've done before, but it's important that they know that you think they belong there, that they are resilient and they will get through. And this is all part of promoting growth mindset that we talked about earlier. Now, this is a picture of my dorm at San Francisco State University in the mid-'80s. This dorm has long since been torn down, but I want to show you this picture as a supplementation of a side note for parents who are anxious. So when your kids do get in, you may have some doubts. Your kids may have some doubts on move-in day. They might say, oh, I don't think I want to go. This is not for me. I made the wrong decision. Or they'll be in college and you'll see that they're switching majors and things like that, or they may want to switch schools. Again, this is commonplace throughout the college experience. Doubts and second thoughts. When I left San Francisco State University, my first quarter at UC Irvine, I did very well at San Francisco State, and I had rather an inflated ego, certainly about my writing ability, and got my first C+ on a history paper that I thought actually brought the characters back to life. And I started having doubts and second thoughts, and maybe I didn't belong in a place like this. you know, you may also find that when your kids are at school, and it may be just a couple of miles up the road, but because the nature of the work is both intense and intensive, it may impact visits home. They want to be there, believe me, but just know, although they may not be there, know that they care. And one of the things that we encourage parents to do is to make sure that their young adults and their children are taking advantage of everything universities have to offer. Universities offer a vibrant culture, but part of the magic of that culture is being there on campus and being enmeshed in it. And also, and this actually picks up from a conversation that we had not too long ago about the values that you've instilled in your sons or daughters. And I will tell you, some of you may be worried that once your children are in college, they're going to change the way that they think or change the way that they behave, or they'll forget everything that they've been taught. And I can tell you it is just the opposite. They cling on to the values you've instilled in them, and they're using those values, those wonderful values that you've provided to them, as a way to navigate new experiences and ways of thinking and to make good decisions. And don't forget, when we were talking earlier about trust, and ensure that until they give you reason to believe otherwise, make sure that you trust them. Some other things, some essential skills for success. And I think that a lot of your kids are getting these in schools now. This idea of collaboration, communication and interpersonal skills, solving problems in a holistic way, in a brain compatible way, learning how to manage time. And that's certainly something that you can provide assistance with. Leadership and preparation. So all of the things that we have been talking about since day one, all of these sort of neuroscientifically compatible things are really what will provide them with a good degree of success. Now, let's look at the other side of the coin, and something nobody likes, and this is dealing with rejection. And so when your kids are sending out applications, and you know, they used to say you're going to get the thick envelope or the thin envelope, and the thick envelope was, you know, everything you know, that the recently admitted college student needs, maps and files, and you know, ways to get around the campus. And if you got the thin envelope, you're always worried that it is the rejection letter. Now things come by email. So my only reference, since I went to college in the Stone Age, are the thick and thin envelopes. But again, should it happen, it's important that you tap into growth mindset approaches, this idea of being resilient, this idea of bouncing back, helping them to understand that it is nothing personal. I believe that we had 126,000 applications at UC San Diego. So inevitably, we could not accept everybody, but nobody's going through and go, oh, I don't like the way this kid is. Make sure that you do celebrate the acceptance letters that you get, and to embrace the schools that did accept you. Don't waste energies on what ifs and second guessing. Those are energies not well spent. It's better to invest those energies into the next application. And I will tell you that you are not alone if you have been rejected from the campus of your choice. The science fiction Isaac Asimov, who wrote incredible pieces of work, celebrated globally, was rejected from Columbia. Tom Hanks was rejected from both MIT and Villanova. Barack Obama, you probably know him as the President of the United States, was rejected from Swarthmore, wound up going to Occidental College, which was a much better fit for him. And Steven Spielberg, the filmmaker, was rejected from film school at both USC and UCLA. And I have a feeling that he probably teaches there every now and then. So again, you're not alone. And you know who else got many rejection letters? Yours truly. I was even rejected from graduate school at my own home campus where I was teaching at the time. So again, people bounce back, they find out where they fit. And there are alternatives. There's community colleges, which did me a lot of good. I will always be thankful to all of the community colleges I attended, or even things like gap years that allow you to experience the world a little bit before coming back. Now, should be important to talk about switching majors. I've switched majors probably 10 times when I was an undergraduate, and I will tell you that the major that people choose neither predicts or guarantees your future. And you will find that the average college graduate switches jobs at least once every 3 years, and the average person changes career fields 2 or 3 times in their lifetime. So I know that we ask you early on in college to make a decision about the rest of your life and only give you a glimpse behind the curtain. And it's only when you're actually on campus and taking classes where you might find passions or find interests. So don't worry too much if your kid changes majors. Hopefully not too frequently, but again, it's all about identity and it's all about finding their pathway. Again, when we talk to admissions officers, the big thing for them is the willingness to learn through experience. Having a growth mindset was one of the most important essential skills for both post-secondary and professional success, as are things like motivation and commitment, what we've talked about earlier. Enthusiasm, ambitions, goals, talents, attendance, and critical thinking are all ingredients in the recipe for post-secondary success. The most important ingredient, though, is you and the support that you give your kids. So with that, I believe that we are about 4 minutes away from time. So I've asked Ms. Delgado to come back and see if we have questions from the group.
Thank you so much, Dr. Appel. Oh my gosh, that was, it hit so many points as an educator and also having to navigate with 2 kids of my own, that whole college experience. I completely can relate and everything resonated, what advice you were letting people know. It is so important to be flexible when it comes to college decisions. It as a parent, really, it's their decision, and whether it's community college or straight to a university, or they got rejected for that university that they wanted to go because all their friends are going, and it's okay. Life will go on, and once they get through college, there's so many great things that accomplishments that they do. I do have some questions, Dr. Appel.
Absolutely.
I am going to shoot at you. I'm going to try to pick because we won't have time for all of them. But remember, put your questions on the Q&A and he will get to them this week, and then we'll share them next week with you.
Absolutely.
First question's coming from one of our participants, Taida Cow. Hopefully I got that name right. Her question is, my son has autism. I've read that many students with autism don't go to college. He struggles with social and emotional learning. How can we help our children succeed in college? Are there more services for them?
Yes, there are an abundance of services, and that's really, again, emphasizes the important part about checking out campuses. And again, you know, the colleges and universities, whether they're community colleges, private colleges, independent colleges, or public universities, they all have a multitude of services. Some universities will be very proactive in reaching out, but really it is incumbent upon both the parents and the students to seek them out. But I can tell you, insofar as autism is concerned and socio-emotional development, I can tell you that UC San Diego has an amazing and abundance of specialized support resources. And, you know, that should not preclude any student from attending a college, because there are services and an abundance of opportunities to improve socialization skills and independent skills. And certainly, if there are specific issues or specific questions, send them my way and I will get right back. That is a brilliant question, a wonderful way to start off.
Thank you so much, Dr. Appel. And the next question comes from Rosario Herrera. Her question is, in terms of motivation, I have always motivated my kids to go to college. How do we help them not get stuck with just one career? My son concentrates in engineering and my daughter more into music. How do we help them explore and define their careers?
Well, that is a great question. And this really resonates because I remember dealing with kids who really wanted to go into the medical profession, and they would tell me, but I don't like blood, and I don't like disease, and I don't like people. And I thought, well, there goes your medical career then. But again, in any field, there are manifold different opportunities. So if you are interested in healthcare, there are human resources personnel in healthcare. There are there's education in the context of healthcare. There's accounting. So every field has a number of broad number of opportunities. And what we're finding is that work today is becoming a lot more interdisciplinary. So if you have a student who is interested in music, that doesn't mean that they have to go to be a musician. There are a lot of other ancillary careers. So the best way to do that, again, is to come on to our campus, for example, and you will see music and technology labs. The same thing. I've had parents who said the only thing that my kid likes to do is play video games. And what we will tell them is, if your kid likes to play video games, maybe they would like to design video games and introduce them to coding and introduce them to technologies. Best thing to do is to come onto campus, talk to some of our faculty, and not just at UC San Diego, but at any college, and they can give you the breadth and depth of careers.
Thank you so much, Dr. Appel. Like always, we are so lucky to have you. This is our final webinar for our series. For the parents who are asking, when is the next series coming out? When are we going to have our next session? Please bear with us. We are in the process of trying to decipher that and also navigate everything else happening in second semester for our school district. So I did put a final survey out for everyone with some topics that we think might be ones that you want us to pursue for our next series. Please go ahead and pick the ones that you prefer. We will take the ones that are highest on the survey list as more people requesting them. Also, when you finish this webinar, you will get an email with a different survey, pretty much a more open survey for you to give us feedback so we can make these webinars better for you. Please give us some real suggestions as to what might be better, and also an opportunity for you to give us additional topics. Maybe the topics that we put on the survey are not topics that you're thinking about. So we also want to solicit those topics as well. So we really appreciate your time, and it is past our time. It's 2:03. So we do want to be respectful of your time. But Dr. Appel, any last comments, suggestions, and ahas?
Oh, God. Well, first of all, my aha is that, this went really quickly. And as always, I'm so very appreciative to everybody here, everybody out in the audience, and thankful for all of you. Remember, most important message I can communicate is that you are not alone. We're all going through this together, and together we can get through anything. We are made of strong stuff. The other thing that I would mention is for those of you completing Series 2, don't forget you are also going to get an award associated with Series 2 for the university. So hopefully by the end of your year, you will have new wallpaper that you can put up. But, you know, just in closing, want to thank you again for your kind invitation, for your hospitality, for your smart questions, and for caring so much about your kids. And your kids are so much better for having you in their lives. And I hope that you all know that. Big kudos to all of you. And thank you from all of us at the university, because you know what? We are learning from you just as much as you are learning from us.
Thank you so much, Dr. Appel. Like always, we are going to stay behind as people are logging out, so you can post your questions on the Q&A so Dr. Appel can see them and respond to each question. Everybody has different types of questions and needs, and I think it's important that we also document those questions for our purposes. The poll is still out. I will leave it up for another 2 or 3 minutes if you are still putting down your votes on the topics. Again, you will get a separate email with an opportunity for you to just write in your topics. So if you have a great topic that you think we hadn't thought of yet, that would be helpful for all parents, please send us an email or put it on the chat or put it on the Q&A. We really would appreciate that. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Appel. Thank you, Monica, for the interpretation. She's always so awesome. Gracias, Monica. All right. So we can stop recording, Anna?